Hello everyone, it's Chris here. I'm just back from the airport. I left this morning at about 5 o'clock and I'm back. It's now just after 8 o'clock. I have to do other things as well. But normally I can tell you the road in Phuket anyway from the airport to Patong Beach can take you an hour, hour and a half. When it's going is good, but when the going is bad, and it wasn't this morning, we were very lucky. In fact, it will take you 2, 3 hours easily. Which is still nothing. I recall when I lived in Lagos, Nigeria, the airport there with the roads, of course, is something magnificently horrible. I don't know. They say it's better now. I'm talking, 13 years ago, but anyway, they can take you 5 to 6 hours to get from the airport to get home. And there's one occasion where I heard people actually took them something like 10 or 12 hours. They had to sleep next to the road. The problem there is that in Nigeria, you can't really stop at the toilet, at the garages or the fuel stations, because in those days anyway, it was so dirty and horrible that you're better off just to sit behind the bush. And then there's, of course, the traffic. Very bad, very bad. But anyway, we all survived that as well. And I'm back. I'm back here in the studio on the third floor. And I'm now going to talk about the book. And we're nearing the end of the series now. Of course, nearing the end of the series for me. It might not be close to the end for you. I don't know how many books you read, but I think there's about 5 books left, which I need to talk about, and then it's over, which will take me another week or two. But anyway, today I want to speak about Codename Crocodile. And Crocodile is not that long. It's about 351 pages. And also the first book I wrote after the audio came into being. After I realized that it's possible to put the books in audio. So unlike the other books, it's only one language. There's only one language. It would be like English and English alone. The other books would be a mixture of languages. You have French, you have Portuguese, Zulu, and also, of course, English, and some Afrikaans in between. Why? Because the characters can speak all these languages, and so they would often speak like that. You would often find Foxtrot and Gelslang actually discussing Angelique in her presence while speaking Zulu or Portuguese, which they at one stage thought she couldn't understand. But this is Angelique you're talking about. So for many years he actually recorded them, and she had 2 of her analysts, just translated to her, and then she would always know what they were saying, which was never disrespectful. It was just like, perhaps we should attack her and overpower her before she does something really stupid, something like that for her own good. But of course, again, this is Angelique Dawson you're talking about, so she would not take kindly to that type of thing. And so she learned to speak Zulu and Portuguese as well. And last time I saw her, she could speak Afrikaans, English, German, French, Zulu, and Portuguese fluently. You wouldn't know, it's like a native. So anyway, interesting people. And again, guys, if I sweat a bit, please forgive me. It's very warm outside. And I don't have time to wait for the aircon to kick in, but it's very powerful. I just don't have time. I'm alone in the building again. My friend Anita was here for 6 weeks. Our fellow Legacy Conversations presenter, she came to visit for 6 weeks. And she's back, going back home now. That's where I dropped at the airport. Of course, this is many months ago by the time you see her. And the next visitor would be our chaplain, Colonel Andre Willifier, the Railway Police Special Task Force Commander, trained in Israel. Some of his members were trained in West Germany. And fantastic people. His entire series on Legacy Conversation on the on the railway police and special task force, all that railway police. It's really, really elite units. Anyway, why I mentioned Andre here is Andre is also a hostage negotiator, and he was also a bomb disposal officer. Now, it's a funny thing about the railway police is that the special task force actually, all of them were bomb disposal officers, and all of them could actually defuse a bomb while the aircraft is flying. Yeah, that makes it a little bit unique. So they would be as air marshals hiding away amongst the passengers on many, many flights. And, well, most of them actually. And then they would intervene if there was reason to intervene. And then they would also be able to defuse any bomb, which, again, out of the box thinking. And why I'm mentioning this is in Codename Crocodile, the book we're discussing today is we do look at explosives. We had, for a long time, people were asking me about explosives and the use of explosives in the shadows. And so I thought, let me write a book about that, and let me write a book where it can actually be easily adapted to audio. So I don't know if I actually succeeded with that, but I tried. It's a slightly different writing style. And so you need to make sure that it flows and not to go too far away from a subject on hand, which is something I normally do. Man, there's so much information in the books and there's so much in my head, sometimes I just go a bit left and a bit right. And I called the book after my mother-in-law, Rebecca's mom, who's a wonderful woman, even if she's Swiss. She's actually a great person, accepted me without the usual Swiss nonsense. During the marriage, we got married quite quickly. We met online, and then we met in life, and we got engaged, and then I think 2-3 months later we were married. And then, of course, I had to wait quite a few months to get the visa sorted to go to Swineland. But in the meantime, I had to meet the parents. When you get married in your 50s, you don't really ask the parents, and especially not of a liberal woman like Rebecca. She would take not kindly to that type of thing. So I had to come to this very same hotel, this very same guest house I'm sitting in now. In 2019, I came here to meet my father-in-law, who is now deceased, and I had to meet my mother-in-law, who is not deceased and in great health as we speak here. 86 years old and still going strong, man. Nothing wrong with that woman whatsoever. Still works as a tour guide at Majorca. And very, very strong person. Very, very strong. A great person, in fact. But by that time, she was long divorced of my father-in-law, who turned out to be gay. And this is exactly what this place used to be. It used to be a gay hotel or gay guest house. And the reason why he started it is he said, well, in those days, when they started it more than 20 years ago, gays and lesbians were not that accepted. Even though Thailand, they were always quite accepted in lady boys. It's quite common here. You have to look for Adam's apple, mayo, or you might regret your encounter in the morning, but whatever. You remember that old song, Will You Still Love Me in the Morning? Luckily, I never had to actually experience that type of thing, which is one of the advantages of being born ugly, But that's a good thing. So anyway, I flew here. I first flew from Bloemfontein to Johannesburg, Jan Smuts, Oliver Tambo, and I flew to Singapore. At Singapore, I missed my flight. Why? Because Singapore Airlines gave me the wrong boarding gate. As I was flying over the ocean, I was playing with their computers in the seat in front of you. And it said to me I should go to that boarding gate. And of course, me being stupid, I ran to that boarding gate. And if you know how big Singapore airport is, you'll have some sympathy. So I ran all the way there, and I got to the damn gate. I even took a train to get there, and I only had something like an hour. And guess what? Got there, I'm the only one there. They changed it. So by the time I got to the real boarding gate, only my suitcase were waiting for me there, which I just offloaded. Ugh, what a nightmare. So I will never fly Singapore Airlines again. I'm the type who will hold it against them forever, even though it's a good airline. And I intensely dislike Singapore. I dislike Singapore as much as I dislike Switzerland. But there's many reasons for that. So I would always say to you, man, if you want to fly somewhere, fly to Dubai or Qatar and then fly from there direct to Phuket. F Singapore and F Singapore Airlines as well. Oh yeah, and on the flight back, I had a seat on Singapore Airlines, which was broken. Yeah, so it couldn't move. So I had to sit upright like that, like in church, for the entire flight. It was not that nice. But to be honest with you, I don't like flying that much anymore. Flying to South Africa once, I was poisoned. Poor old SW4E, the Special Forces bomb expert, the malicious expert, he fetched me at the airport and I was quite white. They almost put a drip into me. Man, that was bad. I was really poisoned on the flight. And so, yeah, so I don't like flying anymore. I really don't like long flights. Anyway, talking about the SW4E, he was actually at my wedding. So was Elsa, who you've met, the Springbok shot. She was also there to take pictures because he's also a photographer. And basically, there were virtually no one there. SW's brother did the marriage ceremony. He's also a dominee. And so we had the marriage, and Rebecca's children was there, but no other family whatsoever. I purposely didn't invite my mom. I didn't invite my ex-brother or ex-sisters. They wouldn't have come anyway. But, I thought to myself, in the previous marriage, they were all there and they brought me bad luck. They weren't at Melissa's either, and they definitely were not at Lotus. So, yeah, so there you go. Anyway, let's go to crocodile. So we look at the use of explosives in the real world, in the spy world, and how you can use explosives to actually kill, maim, and murder. And of course, you can also do false flags. It is well known that the Mossad actually planted a car bomb, I think in Argentine or someplace like that, next to the embassy, and they blew it up. And it was all just to get sympathy. That's why they did it. No one was hurt. But you have to wonder when somebody will be hurt. And then, of course, we looked at the different assassination methods. Now, I had to be sure in the book that I don't give away any secrets which will, bring people into trouble or give terrorists any ideas. I know that most of the GMJ books I actually read at military academies in the Far East. Not that they pay me royalties. But they do read it. I know they read it because some of them has actually contacted me, and they're very nice people indeed. So I didn't want to give away things which was not known already. So basically, we had two assassin teams, one led by one Alpha and the other one by Ishmael the priest, which I always say to people, if there's ever a character in the books which is closely related to me and my life, it would be Ishmael the priest. He's in several books. But anyway, doesn't matter. It's just stories. Nothing but stories, as you know. And we deliberately put these two teams against each other to create a bit of esprit de corps and let them think outside the box. And what they had to do is they had to penetrate a certain place which was on observation and then plant their devices there, and then we could see what they came up with and what they didn't come up with, and then you take it from there. And in the background, something else is happening, of course. There's still this running battle between Angelique and her assassins. And in this book, Hotel Crocodile, I do explain to you where the egg breakers come from. As far as I know, Project Ivory, go and research it. And also on Legacy Conversations, quite a few egg breakers were talking. There were a lot of wink wink going on in the background. Also, the assassins have changed considerably from my days. Yeah, but you can read the book and see where that comes from and why they were created. It has to do with making sure that you don't destroy your spy networks. In other words, it's just a week or two ago from the time I'm talking here, but many, many months since for you when you see this video, which is probably coming out in February, but it's July now when I'm recording it, so it's 6-7 months ahead. And Israel, when they attacked Iran, which I have to say was totally against the UN Charter, totally illegal, totally rogue nation way of doing things. And the US, of course, but then the two of them are like little Hamas. So the question always is who's in charge of who? Conventional wisdom will say that Israel actually controls the US. My feeling is no. No, I think that the US is controlling Israel and using it as a lapdog to cause a lot of trouble in the Middle East. And of course, from that trouble, what happens? Yeah, all the Christians are killed or removed. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, actually, if you understand this third temple theory of this, which is a bunch of shite, which I explain in Oath of Evil, and also on that hour and a half episode, special episode on the Israel-US versus Iran war. You can go and listen there. I speak about the third temple theory because that's what's behind it. It's idiotic. It's totally unbiblical. But if the US is the second beast of the Bible, of the book of Daniel, as well as Revelation, and it is, not me saying so, that's Martin Luther, that's all the great reformers, all of them said so, yeah. Then you fully understand what's happening. But unless you can think like that, at that level, you will have no clue what I'm talking about, and you will probably think that I'm insane. You're not the first one who say that, but unlike you, I actually have papers to say I am sane. That's a long story. But to make this story less long, we know that Israel has the great assassination program in the world. They've killed, murdered, assassinated more than 3,000 people, probably closer to 4,000 people since 1948. Always say it helped them absolutely bugger all. They're still being attacked. They hate it more now than ever before. And so is the US. You're absolutely hated. And if you don't understand why you're a US citizen, try to think from it from the outside. Like, I'm not a US citizen. I have no desire to even visit your place. Well, I would have loved to see the battle sites and the civil war and that. I'm banned in your country. So I don't give a shit with what happens to the US whatsoever. I'm watching it from the outside. And from the outside, I can tell you 90% of the world just don't like you. And why don't they like you? Well, read my books and find out how many countries you've attacked and bombed and how many you've destabilized. And then go and read the Bible, the actual Bible, the King James Bible. Nothing else. No. Not the American version, not the new international version, not the Jesuit Dua or Dua, whatever they call their crap. It's not a Bible. It's just shite. You can make fire with it. I won't be insulted. Because the Bibles have been changed. Read Oath of Evil. And you'll find out that the new international version is the Jesuit Bible. A little bit disguised. And I can give you 58 pages of changes they made to the Bibles. Go and read Oath of Evil. You'll be surprised. But because the US is acting like the second beast of the Bible, and it will get a lot more arrogant and a lot more dangerous as time goes on until the end of times, then that's why people don't like you. The sad thing about this is it makes you automatically a target. If you are like a Jew or you're like American or American Jew, even if you're against Israel, and many of you are, most of you actually, It's not going to help you. If you're captured or people get hold of you, they're still going to kill you. Yeah, they're going to murder you. Yeah, so you have to blame your Congress critters who's given all their powers to the president. And then also, when you elect a president, you always end up with John McCain. And if you're really a smart person, please tell me what's the difference between the demo rats and the reptiles, the Republicans. There's no difference. Absolutely no difference. But you're going to see a mixture of state and church now. You're going to see they're going to implement this 2025 crap of this, which is Jesuit thinking, totally. And they're going to reintroduce their God. It's not a real God. It's not a Christian God. I almost want to say it's Satan. They're going to reintroduce that into the schools. And you're going to go on with your blue laws. You're going to get that into many more states where it's already on the legal books. And they're never going to tell you that the legal, the reason behind the blue laws is actually why? To go to church on Sundays, which is a Catholic thing. It's against the fourth commandment of God. Yeah. And they will tell you, no, this is for family. Oh, it's for the workers' rights, man, workers' rights. You can't work 7 days a week. No, man, you need a day with your family. Why is that day on a Sunday? Tell me. Why? Why not on a Monday? Huh? Why not on a Saturday? By the way, since I'm a churchgoer on Saturdays, I keep the Sabbath. I would not be happy if there's such a law. No, I won't be. Because that is totally where you, as a government, start interfering where you shouldn't. That is a separation between church and state. That is one of the reasons why Kennedy was murdered. The other reason was he tried to declare this APEC, which is this American Israel type of organization who bribes the entire Congress, apparently. So they say. So many of the Congress people actually testified to that, and which is a law upon themselves. And Kennedy was trying to declare them as enemy agents. So they had to register, and then they never did, by the way. He was murdered before that could be done. And then, of course, there's a problem with the CIA, which he wanted to disband and break apart after the Bay of Pigs incident. Yeah, so there's many reasons why Kennedy was shot. Strangely, this never comes out in the official explanations, but I don't really think that we were more than one shooter. I don't think that, and I think Oswald did shoot him. But I'll also say to you that both Oswald and Rubenstein, it is Jack Ruby. It's actually his real name was Rubenstein. Actually, were involved with the CIA. There's no doubt about it. Read Codename Snake 606, which is the latest book as I speak here, which is after this one, after Codename Crocodile, and you will find out what I'm talking about. So what I did in Crocodile is I've explained the use of explosives. I've also explained to you the difference between demolitions from a military viewpoint. In other words, where you get a bomb and it's already made. And I'm simplifying things now, guys. I don't know how well you're trained, so I don't want to make it over complicated. But in the book, we go into a lot of detail. We look at slurry, which is liquid explosives, which the South Africans used in Angola, the Special Forces guys. They did fantastically well with that. I discussed the different detonators and so forth. But as you can imagine, it's not always possible for the spy, which is behind enemy lines, to get hold of explosives like that. He sometimes have to make his own. I don't give any formulas away here, by the way. And also he has to think out of the box in terms of funnies. In other words, once again, based upon experience, can you put plastic explosives in the tube of a bicycle? And then instead of air. Yeah, can do that. It's just a bit heavy. Can you hide it somewhere else? Blah, blah, blah. We look at those things. It's really, really fascinating. But one of the things we're looking at is also the way the Israelis has murdered or assassinated Palestinian representatives. just to, as a way of a method, as a way of a study. I'm sure they had good reasons why they did it, but I'll also say to you, it helped you bugger all. They still like you, they still attack you. So that's not the way to go. It obviously didn't work, so why carry on? Unless it's just revenge. But your revenge don't really work that well. That Operation Wrath of God of yours, I've spoken to more than one Mossad agent who said to me it's the biggest bullshit and the biggest fiasco and rubbish ever. There was a South African woman, and she's a hero. Let me be no doubt about it, Sylvia, who actually joined this program. She wasn't even Jewish. I think her father might have been Jewish. And then they went out and they murdered the wrong guy. I think in Norway or someplace. And she ended up in jail and she married her attorney and she retired, I think, to Cape Town after she was released out of jail. And lived quite happily ever after. But today, of course, she's late and buried in Israel, as she should be. But that was just one of the fiascos. There were other fiascos going on there as well. There were agents who actually turned amongst themselves, turned against the government. Then others were turned against them. Yeah, it was almost a civil war, man. It's rubbish. It didn't work. So yeah, you can go to the Hollywood version, which I think there's a movie which came out like that and everybody was clapping hands. Yeah. From an intelligence viewpoint, crap. It's the same as blowing your spy networks as Israel did with this attack on Iran, which they sincerely regretted afterwards. You blew all your spy networks there now. You use these guys. Many of them got executed. There are thousands will be executed in the future. You blew it. For what? For a war you lost before you even started? Now that is the problem which you have in intelligence. If you have an asset or a source on a deep cover and you've got him, and you've got your spy networks, you have to protect them at all costs. That's my opinion. Then you can't go out and murder people and commit sabotage and things like that, because these guys, they can do it. They train to do it, but it's really not their job to do it. It's the same with special forces. It's not special forces' job to go and engage the enemy. In fact, their job is reconnaissance. They need to go in, reconnaissance whatever they need to recon, and then come back and tell the conventional forces which will then go in, or perhaps a different special forces group can go in an emergency. It's not their damn job to start attacking people, but sometimes it must happen. I mean, that's also so. But inherently, it is the wrong move to make, because they're just too valuable. They're too valuable to do what the parachute battalion or the conventional infantry should do. Really, they're too valuable. It takes more to train a special forces operator than a pilot. And it takes more to train a spy than a pilot. And it takes years to get a network going, a spy network. And the value of a spy network is so much more than just blowing up somebody. But anyway, on December 8th of 1972, there was a PLO representative called Amshari. And he was in France, and then there was an Italian journalist who wanted to meet him to have some kind of interview, I suppose. But this Italian journalist was actually not an Italian journalist, a Mossad agent. Same as what they did at Dubai about, 10 years ago, when they got there in a group of about 20, 30 of them. And they came in and they were using Irish passports and all other passports. And then they murdered the guy. They disguised themselves as tennis players. They even play tennis. There were females among them. And then two of them actually entered the guy's room and they just throttled him to death. They actually strangled him. The problem is this. It's not 1965 anymore. There's cameras everywhere. Every single one of you have been identified. Yes. Not one of you will ever be able to work outside Israel again. Perhaps you can get away with it. But let me assure you, there is something like facial recognition. And that facial recognition is programmed to pick you up. Doesn't matter what passport you abuse, you are screwed. If you go into a certain country, South Africa is one of them, good luck. Good luck. If you think in South Africa when you arrive there and you're standing there and you're looking at the scanner, like at so many airports, because they're going to take your temperature now to make sure you don't have some kind of a flu or illness or whatever. Yeah. It's not just about that. No. When you're standing there and you comb your hair, there might be something behind that mirror. So everybody is using this tactic. So yeah, you might get away with it, but I don't know for how long. So anyway, he came back from that meeting, and he's back in his room, and then this is the days, of course, before cell phones. Phone rings, picks up the phone. Guy says that Mr. Hamshari. He says yes. Boom. There it goes. The moment he says that, they press the button. They know he's in the room. They press the button, and he just blew him. And the explosives were not in his phone, actually. It was under his desk, as far as we know. And it was the very first Mossad assassination under the program of Wrath of God, which was for the Munich massacre in 1970. What was it, 72? So we were quite quick of the mark to kill this guy. But it was the first one in France. Now, then, and this is the other problem we have with these killings. It doesn't work. And then this guy gets replaced. I'm sorry, now he's dead. Now a new terrorist comes to the fore. Carlos the Jackal. Have you heard of him? Yeah, you should have. He's in jail now. He was never as highly rated as the Western press made him. In fact, he wasn't a good terrorist. But he had the fame, he had the fame. And that's the problem. That is why you shouldn't do it. You don't know who's going to replace him. Classic example again. So Israel, you took out how many Iranian generals? About 12 of them. What happened? They got replaced by the second in commands. Now, if you're in a good military, you will know that there's a lot of young colonels out there who should be generals. A lot of it. About 50 of them for every general. Yeah. Guess what? That guy's ambitious. He knows how to do the job, man. This is a military. It's not a flippant sect. It's only with a sect, idiot, where you can take out the leader and the entire sect then goes down. Yeah, that's what happens. But with a military or a well-established terrorist organization like Hamas or Hezbollah, who of course are freedom fighters for other people, but I'll call them terrorists, it's not gonna help you to take out the leadership element. There's gonna be big plan for this. Are you stupid? Huh? What did you... Yeah, okay. I go for practical things, For me, solution, I actually want a practical solution, one that actually works. Not that hard. So anyway, so we talk about that one just to show you how it can be done. And then there's another one called Hussein al-Bashir. And this is now on January 24th, 1973. This is now about a year later, a few months later actually. And this guy is part of Al-Fatah. And he's sitting down in his bed in Cyprus, in a place called Nicosia. And great town that, quite nice cats there. And anyway, so he sits down on his bed and boom, the bed blows up. So what they did is, again, they rigged the explosives in the bed, and then this guy sat down and they used a radio signal or something to blow it. We go into the book about that as well, because that is very fascinating, actually. Because you will know that IEDs were starting to be used in Iraq and Afghanistan quite substantially. And of course, the US military and the coalition forces were pissing in fear. Yeah, they were so scared of it. And why? Because they started using shaped charges. And we do go in the book what the shaped charge is. how it works, the Monroe effect, and where it comes from. So I'm not going to discuss it with you here. You can go and read it. And they knew, of course, that these shape charters had to be set off by probably sulfur. And so what they did is they started putting these jammers in every vehicle. And so they would jam the signals and then they could drive past it. Okay, that worked for a while, but not for long. Not for long, because then, of course, they changed techniques. And so what they do these days is they use detonating cord, and there's another technique as well, which I don't describe in this book because I was asked not to. And there was also a South African connection here. It's very fascinating. Around about 2003-4, the Americans started begging for help. They started asking, what's going on? Is there any way that South African Special Forces are involved with making these bombs, which is now exploding all over Iraq? Because when you make a bomb, you actually give away quite a bit of your personality and your training. You will make it in a certain way. So if I can defuse the bomb, I can in the first place check it for fingerprints. I will also check it for DNA. I definitely will. And I will also look at the way the bomb was made, and I would almost certainly be able to tell you who made that bomb. Yeah, got databases for that. And it seems that the way these bombs were made were traced back to South African Special Forces with techniques which were used in Angola and other places. Yeah. So the question arose now, is there Muslims in South African Special Forces who went over to the other side? Yes or no? If not them, are there perhaps other people in South African Special Forces which went over to the other side? Yes or no? And then it can go even further and you can start asking, but what if it's official? What if South Africa was a well-known opponent of the US? And I'll get to that just now. What if they somehow got involved to train terrorist groups to kill US soldiers? Yeah, interesting question, isn't it? Isn't it? I understand there's a court case or something going on in South Africa right now. I don't follow the news. About 5 reconnaissance regiment members were murdered, policeman, investigating officer, for some reason. I don't know. I don't know what happened. I've got no clue. I don't know if the guys are guilty. I don't know if it's official. I don't know if it's a cover-up. I don't know. It might also be criminals. You know, guys for some reason who went off a bandwagon. It happens. It happens in every unit. You have these people, it should never happen, but it does. And we don't know. And since I don't know, I'm refusing to speculate, even though people are asking my opinion all the time. And I don't know. I wasn't in Special Forces. But I'll tell you what, when the Yanks started crying, it was a major, major issue because you don't know if the Yanks will then decide this is a declaration of war and then attack the country. Yeah, they were thinking in that way. Yeah, definitely. They were definitely informing people like Angelique Dawson that they might respond in kind. Oh. Now, I won't be like Daddy Trump and say to you, bring it on. But I will advise you, go and read Codename 1 Alpha. Yeah, go and read that book. Especially the second part. Read what happens to your teams. What will happen to them if I dare to do this in South Africa? Yeah, try that. See how far you get. So anyway, that is how this Hussein al-Bashir died, and then something strange happened in June of 2023. Now this is, I believe, after the 7th of October story. And it seems that the Israeli Defense Force suddenly lost 7 vehicles, and they were all shot out by IEDs. At a place called Jenin, like like Jenin, Jenin. I don't even know where it is. Wouldn't know. And it seems that these bombs were detonated not by cell phone, but by detonation caught or by laser beams or by hand. So you see, it always goes left and right. You counter them here, and they counter you there. So you need to figure it out. You need to work it out. It was kept very quiet, but they went deep shite. They had to call in Apache gunship support, which they would always do anyway. So anyway, then there's also, I described here in the last part of the book, I described the attempt of George Elser. Now, George Elser is a guy who got executed in the last week of the war, 1945, even though the crime he committed happened around about 1939 already. So he was kept for 6 years, basically in a concentration camp, and not as an inmate, meaning that he was worked to death or anything. He was kept there as a prisoner. There is a difference between an inmate and a prisoner in the way I'm thinking, because you think of a concentration camp, you think of people being worked to death. He wasn't like that at all. He was just kept there, which of course is an inmate in certain ways, but I'm sure you understand what I tried to mean. And he's the guy who had the attempt with Adolf Hitler, where he planted explosives into the wall of a building months and months before Hitler was to speak there. And he almost got away with it. I think it was the beer cellar or something explosion. That's what it became known as. And Hitler actually made the speech and he left, and then the bomb went off. Yeah, it was that close, or Hitler would have been gone. Now, why I mention it here is because this George Elser actually had a connection to who? What do I hear? Swine, Swiss. Yeah, Switzerland. Yeah, of course. And Switzerland is saying what? What do I hear? No, there's no such thing. No, rumors. No, we had nothing to do with it. Little swine. If you were trying to kill Adolf Hitler, don't you think you should say that? People will applaud, you know. He's the most hated Catholic ever. Don't you know? Don't you know that? But no, you say no. Why? You know, there's a lot of evidence is that Switzerland was actually involved. We do speak about it in the book. It's very strange that this Elser, he never made any attempt to leave Germany. It's only after the bomb exploded and about a long time after, about hours and hours and hours later, that he actually tried to get to Switzerland. Why was he going to Switzerland? Swine, tell me, why was he going to here? What made George Elser think that he could be kept safe in Switzerland after killing Adolf Hitler? Tell me, Swine. Why did he think that? Why? I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. Please tell me. We will never know. What is also very odd about the attempt of George Elser is that he actually went and scouted this building out 39 times. Yeah, amper 40 keer. Almost 40 times. He went 39 times to scout this building out. And no one picked him up. No one. And then he was, of course, he had to work at night, and he had like a blue cloth over his flashlight to get to see what he was doing. But again, he wasn't trying to flee. It's the most amazing thing. So yeah, there's a lot of things which doesn't make sense there. But for those interested, about 8 of the Nazis were killed and 64 were injured. So yeah, Hitler was damn lucky. There were of course many attempts on Hitler's life. Even that arch liar Winston Churchill was planning one. And again, it's funny, you know, there was a time when you just didn't do that. You didn't kill the head of a state. You just didn't do it. It was the same as you didn't kill the king. You just didn't do it. Many times because you leave a guy alone because he's making mistakes. Hitler was not a great commander at all. So it would have been better to keep him alive, really. Same with Churchill. He was such a bad leader, wartime leader anyway, that, peacetime leader too. I mean, let's talk about his second time as premier. That was a fiasco, man. It was a F-up of note. What did he do? Nothing. No. Anyway, we'll not talk about him. I'll make an episode on Churchill later. But anyway, it's very interesting too, because since we're speaking of the Nazis, and the one who almost died there was Heinrich Himmler, was the SS chief. And guess what was Heinrich Himmler? Mm, mm. Besides being a killer now and all those things, and the SS chief, failed chicken farmer, and the guy who had two wives at the same time. Yeah. But what else was he? Well, he was a devotee of a Roman Catholic, what order? Jesuit order, yes, Society of Jesus. You know that the SS were actually structured accordingly? Same? Do you know that fascism started with Thomas Aquinas? Yeah, the greatest theologian ever produced by the Catholic Church. And what did he say? Fascism. That's where it started with him. Socialism and fascism. And Wu said here in 1929, around about there, and a bit later, what Pope? Was it Pius XII? Who said that the closest system to a Catholic one is what? What? Fascism. Yeah. I have all the evidence. Read out of evil. You'll be shocked out of your mind, because that's exactly what they're bringing back. That is the New World Order. But, let's get back to codename Crocodile. So basically what Angelique did is you have this competition between the team of Ismail the Priest. I think we you first saw in codename Castleberry, but it might be wrong. And then also One Alpha, where you first saw in codename Sanford, I think. Again, I might be wrong. There's so many books. And Ismail the Priest, as far as I know, still exists. He's still alive, the real one. Last time I know, he was actually in charge of him, all the teams. One Alpha, as I told you, died. She was the logical one to take over from Angelique, but then she died with the team, which is a horrible thing. But anyway, so Angelique is setting up these two teams against each other to see who can come up with the greatest idea of, using explosives to murder people. If they do come up with great ideas. But you have to read the book to find out. But then I've got some interesting statistics here I just want to share with you quickly. The 10 countries which votes most against the US at the United Nations. Who do you think they are? In other words, whoever wants, if the US says it's night, they will say, no, we vote it's daytime. In other words, they're your enemy. I don't like you. Who's then? Let's see. Zimbabwe. Yeah, I understand that. Burundi. Yeah. Iran. Yeah, of course. Syria. Yeah, of course. But not anymore. Syria now is under Al-Qaeda control. Al-Qaeda is nothing but a front for the CIA and for Mossad. And all the sanctions, I understand, I've heard this morning, whether it will happen, I don't know, will now be lifted against Syria, and they will be welcomed back into the international community as what? As Al-Qaeda ISIS country. Great. See how that turns out for you, second beast. Let's see how that turns out. Venezuela, well, we can understand that. Venezuela is the country who supplied the most of the oil to the US at some stage, and then, of course, the US decided they need this oil, they want this oil, and socialists took over. And since then, of course, Venezuela is sanctioned like Cuba. It is totally broken as a country. And the nice thing about them is all the Catholics in it in Fleets North. Yeah, they go then across the border. Hello, Joe Biden, 12, 13 million of them. Strange that no one ever sees the religious connections. You just don't see it, don't you? So, isn't that perhaps what Satan wants? Is for you guys to think that life is without God, it's without religion. No, don't mix it. Don't mix it. And I'm not talking about state and church now, or state and mosque. If you're in a place like Saudi, which crucifies people, Sharia law, No, I'm actually talking here about the influence of God, the prophecies playing out. But you don't want to know that. You think that, these people, these Congress critters, they're just stupid, man. Or they just want money, which of course they want. They're both of those things. But what if they're under control of, say, the Jesuit order and they implementing the will of the first beast, as the Bible said will happen? Is it possible? You think it's possible? Yeah, read over of evil. Of course it's possible, it's happening. Okay, then North Korea. Yeah, obviously. Turkmenistan, yeah, I understand that. Cuba, of course, Bolivia, and South Africa. The new South Africa votes more against the US in the same bracket as Cuba and the rest of their mates than any other country in the world. So tell me, and I'm tempted to say this in Afrikaans as well. So glo julle oukies nog steeds dat Suid-Afrika is 'n westerse land, hè? Een wat hou van NATO. Ja, ja. Of is dit dalk 'n BRICS-land, hè? Suid-Afrika van vandag is nie die ou een nie. Hy het heeltemal verander, hy is heeltemal nou teenoorgestelde. So what I basically say to you in Afrikaans is, don't think of South Africa like the old South Africa, which was NATO-orientated, best and that type of thing. No, it's not. It's a BRICS country. It is the exact opposite. And that's why it's the enemy of the US. There's no doubt about it. And the reason for that, I think I spoke about in another book I still have to talk about. I wrote about it in Swan 53. I think because it might have to do with the principle of Ubuntu. Ubuntu and that thing, I'll explain in that book to you. But isn't that interesting? Because this also means that South African intelligence agencies will report to who? China, Russia, BRICS. We're not on your side. We're not on your side. Wake up. Been warning you how many years. But let's look at the greediness of a military-industrial complex. You know that bunch of very, very big corporates in the US, which Eisenhower, yes, President Eisenhower, we actually warned about it. You remember his MIC speech? Yeah, on the last day of his office, where he said there will be people sitting in this chair with no military experience. Let's think. Billy Goat Clinton. Oh, yeah. George Bush, the younger. Yeah, well, he was a pilot in the National Guard, but nothing really. Jippo, what? What did he Jippo? Vietnam, yeah. What about Obama? Oh, Obama never served in his life. What does he know? Donald Trump. Donald Trump, what? He had bone spurs or something. Couldn't go to Vietnam. No. Well, at least he was in a cadet school. That counts. What about Joe Biden? Oh, no, he had asthma. He said to himself, he was a jock, he was like a real athlete. Yeah, but you have too much asthma to go to Vietnam, huh, Joe Biden? What a coward. But he just shows you that, in fact, Mr. Eisenhower was right. He saw this coming, and he realized and he warned. But let's look at it. In 1980, an F-16 jet fighter has cost $4.8 million. In 2021, it's more now. How much? 63 million. 13 times more. 13 keer meer. 13 times. Do you think it is 13 times more effective? No, of course not. But if you want to know where the F-16 and the F-18 actually comes from, read code name Blue Tang. And I actually have a copy of Blue Tang here, but I'm not going to show it to you now. Blue Tang will explain to you where that aircraft actually comes from and how they didn't want it. But they got it anyway. It's an excellent aircraft. It used to be excellent. But just look at the price increase. Huh? Can you say that's inflation? Yeah, played a role, but not 13 times. No, this is just what do I hear? Greediness. Yeah. What about the Predator? Everybody likes a Predator. Everybody likes a Predator. That one who misses 96.5% of the time. I spoke about this before. Well, in 2010, your basic airframe would have cost you about 4.03 million US dollars. And that's about what it costs. It shouldn't cost you more than $500,000, but okay, 4.3. 8 times more than what it should. Then what happened? 3 years later? 3 years later. What did it cost? Almost $17 million. So it went up from, in 3 years, it went from $4 million to $17 million. 4 times more. Amazing, ain't it? Amazing. You would have thought if you order more Predators or F-16s, and you now have like a production line going, but perhaps, the price will be fairly stable because there's more airframes being built, and therefore the logic will tell you it should be not increase multiple times, should it? Yeah, but no, apparently not. Apparently not. But I'll just mention these things because that shows to you that not only do you produce shite in weapons, but it's overpriced. It's totally overpriced. Then it comes down to BlackRock, which said, what? How much money do I need to pay a senator to vote for what they want? $10,000. Yeah, I can bribe you. I have $10,000. Huh? You're a senator. You want $10,000? Let's talk, man. Stop. I can afford that. Imagine what an actual country can afford, guys. I'm just joking. I'm not going to bribe anyone. Is imagine $10,000 is not money. Yeah, it's a lot of money if you put it in rand or you put it in rupees or ruble or whatever. Yeah, when it comes to real money. But it's not money. People earn that kind of money in Africa 20 years ago already. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Let's see what other facts I have here for you. I want to go back to 1962. That is when OAS, that was a secret army organization where some army officers, after the debacle in Algeria, which they said was part of France, and then de Gaulle came and he said, no, it's not part of France. Are you insane? It's across the Mediterranean Sea. Let them be independent and let them be. I'm done with this. I'm not fighting these colonial wars anymore. We've already been kicked out of Indochina. I'm moving out, and I'm moving out of Algeria as well. But anyway, so this group was formed from army officers and others to kill Charles de Gaulle. And so they had 12 snipers around his car when he was traveling with his wife. And they started shooting, all 12 these snipers. And they shot out all the tires of the car. And they just couldn't shoot him. Some say it's an act of God. Some say it wasn't his time. De Gaulle held him in absolute contempt. Firstly, because they tried to murder him with his wife present. Israel, when you bombed those places in Beirut and you bombed it in Iran, in Tehran, entire blocks of flats to kill one person, were you thinking that perhaps his family members there was innocent? Or you're not thinking like that? No. What happened to the time when you could walk up to a guy with a .22 and just shoot him? You were even respected then for doing it like that because you could make sure you got the right guy. Not always, as we saw with Wrath of God, but mostly. And also it was a message. And also it was, in certain ways, admirable, I suppose, doing it like that. But now, what now? What now? No. Now we launch a drone strike, or we launch from cruise missiles, or we launch. Your entire Air Force is a US one. What do you think is going to happen if the US, for some reason, there's a new president and it's coming because the younger generations of Americans don't like you at all? What's going to happen if they pull the plug on you? They refuse you spare parts. How long are you going to fly? You think about that. Don't think. You're too arrogant. You became like a second beast. I'm sorry to say. Saddens me to say it. But anyway, after a 5-year investigation, the French Intelligence Bureau actually released its finding. And this 1962 plot to kill Charles de Gaulle, the president of France, where do you think they traced it back? Where do you think? It's not spoken about today, but it was headline news then. They traced it back to NATO's Brussels headquarters. Yeah, guess who was behind it? Washington. Yeah. Washington, White House, and the CIA. They were behind the assassination attempt on Charles de Gaulle. Hmm. And tell me, where was this planned? What do I hear? Bern, Switzerland. Yeah, that's where it was planned. So the swine is involved in an attempted assassination of Charles de Gaulle. 1962. Are you surprised? Is this shocking to you? It shouldn't be. Wasn't it Henry Kissinger who said that that Knight of Malta, that fake Jew, is also a member of a Catholic organization like the Knights of Malta? Didn't he say that it's fatal to be friends with the second beast of the US? Didn't he say that? Yes, he said that. It's fascinating. But you know what? What's even more fascinating is, have you ever looked at a US movie, action movie, where there's not 100 people who die within the first 5 minutes? Have you ever seen a movie like that? Have you ever seen it's what I was explaining just now about the old style Mossad type of assassination, where you walk up to a guy and shoot him dead and leave. Clean job, professionally done, well done, no problem. But it doesn't work like that in the US, and that does it. When you see these superstars and these action heroes, how many people do they kill in one go, one movie? 20? No. 50? No. More than 100. So you're conditioning your population to, it's okay to commit mass murder. Yeah, it's fine. You can do that. No problem. Yeah, full automatic, man. Rock and roll. Let's just shoot him. Rock and roll. Do you know where the word rock and roll comes from? You know? Let me explain to you. Rock and roll comes from the way a car would rock and roll when you have sex in it. Yeah, that's what that's where that type of music, that's where the name comes from. Fascinating, isn't it? Huh? So what you see here is something which is really amazing. It seems like the entire population who cannot now differentiate between right and wrong. And then you go back to their lack of reading ability, which is that of a 14-year-old child, which is basically the level they can argue, which is not me saying it. I'll put a slide in here for you once again. And then you can understand why this country, the second beast, actually became something like Saudi, where a few families are actually controlling it. And I'll put the slide in for you here as well. And I always say, when I say that in the books, I say, my friends, what went wrong with you? How did it happen? How did it happen? Tell me how it happened that there are 900, almost 1,000, 900 active duty generals and flag officers today to lead the 1.3 million troops of the US military. Now, that is not the army. The army is about 500,000. Oh, shame. It's nothing. It's nothing. Ukraine has 800,000 men in their army, just to put it for you into perspective. The Russians, more than 1 million. Chinese, 1.5 million, some say 2 million men on the arms. Army alone. Huh? And you think you can throw your weight around? But what about the rest of NATO? You guys always say to me, oh, the new South African National Defence Force. Yeah. But do you know how many generals we are? Yeah. I say, yeah, guys, I hear you. I understand your point. I take it. Yes. Remember, brigadiers became generals again. They always used to be generals up to about 1922, when the British Army had to shrink dramatically after the First World War. And the same questions was asked in Parliament. Why are there so many generals? And so the Brits, being clever people, sometimes they said, okay, well, I tell you what, we make the brigadiers, and they're not generals anymore, and then therefore we lose about half our generals. Clever. But when the ANC took over, they needed generals, man. They needed black generals. And of course, they rewarded their people. I was tempted to say hordes and cronies and such things, but I won't say that. I'll think it, but I won't say it. And so these people were then all became generals. They all became brigadier generals. That's why there's so many generals. He's a brigadier general. Yes, traditionally he is. He always was. Have you heard about Custer, of the US Army? The guy who died there at the Battle of the Little Bighorn, where the US Army was actually outgunned. You know that the Indians had actually these Winchester rifles, these loading ones, which is below. They had those things. Yeah, yeah. And the US Army didn't. Fascinating, fascinating. But anyway, so he was a brigadier general at the age of 23 or something. They called him a boy general. And he was not clever enough to be a general, to be honest. He was at the level of a captain, even when he died, perhaps a major. That was his level. But still, we will not speak ill of the dead. No. But historically, nothing special about Cluster. Cluster F, that's what that was. But anyway, so the same ratio exists in NATO. What does it mean? There's a senior officer, a general rank, for every 1,400 men and women. Woo! That is, what did I just say? NATO. I said NATO. So you people complaining about the SANDF all the time? No, we're following NATO, man. You should be proud. Should be proud. What was the ratio in World War II? One senior officer for every 6,000 men and women. 6,000. What is it today? Well, let me repeat. One for every 1,400. In the US Navy, there are 52 flag officers. That's from admirals for every ship in commission. In 1944, there were one flag officer for every 24 ships. So it seems, guys, it's not just in South Africa. It's a worldwide problem. It's a worldwide problem. It's bad. It's pathetic. It shouldn't be like that. But don't point fingers at us all the time. No, don't. Please. It's not. It's the same everywhere else. And then there are more than 400 of these generals are actually at 4-star rank, which is highest. It is full admiral, full general. That's the US military now for you. What were they in World War II when they're commanding about millions of men? How many of us? How many 4 stars were they in World War II in the US military? 7. How many 5 stars? 5. Can you name them? If you're a US citizen, you better be able to say to me now, yes, of course I can name them. But I'm afraid most of you can't. I can, by the way. Now, what does this mean? You're top heavy. Why do I mention these things for you in a book which has to do with explosives? Because, guys, the books are educational. The books are there to educate you. The books are there to bring facts to your attention, which perhaps you don't know about. They are there to bring to your attention things which you should know about. And if I say things like this, I can back it up. Of course, I have all the evidence. And that's why I do it, because I don't know which one of my books you will actually read. There are so many. There are 54 of them. So I mention these things not to insult, but to just bring you back to earth and to show you that we should always look at the other side as well. Isn't it like that? It's my legal training talking. Audi alteram partem rule. And the other side for these assassinations, which Israel is doing, with their bombs and their cruise missiles and their standoff weapons on the aircraft, their bunker busters. The other side of the coin is they save their own lives by doing that. It's not surgical. There's fuck all surgical about it. Excuse my language. Nothing. Because you kill so many innocents with it. And from a viewpoint, counter-terrorism, what does that mean? You've created so many more terrorists. Which means what? Exactly what you people are saying. Yeah, this Palestinian kid or this Arab kid is going to grow up and he's going to kill us. Therefore, let's kill him now, before he can kill us. That's logical, isn't it? It's logical, but it's evil. It's evil, guys. You can do better than that. You can do better than that. It's not you. If I think of my many mates in Israel and I think of my many Jewish friends, these are good people. They're good people. They will not do such things. Have a look at yourself. Have a good look at yourself. But I'm not going to preach anymore. Code name Crocodile. It is available on Amazon. Audio, hardcover, softcover, and Kindle. I don't have a hard copy anymore. When my mate came here the other day, Mark Draper, who I'm sure he's a damn liberal. Hello, Mark. You're listening here. We're missing you. Please come back. You're always welcome. I gave him one of my last copies. I'll just have to order another one. And that is Codename Crocodile. I hope you find it interesting. I hope you learned something from it. And until we meet again, God bless. And hope it's going well with you.